And we hope that we make it through the High Holy Days. Actually, it's the greatest time. A week from tomorrow night, we're winding down the 5 books of Moses. The High Holy Days are actually 3 weeks. It's not just Rosh Hashanah and the Big Kippur. From Rosh Hashanah through Simchat Torah, it's 3 amazing weeks of the greatest thing to do, to pray and to reflect and to resolve, to do better and be better. We're heading into not only the High Holy Days, it means we're winding down the 5 books of Moses. And we find ourselves, as Rabbi Bowman said, in chapters 26 through 29 of Deuteronomy, in the Torah portion named for its opening words, Ki Tavo. 2 big themes in this week's Torah portion are the history of our faith family, this Jewish people, and something we all know about, blessings and curses. Where are they? Who's responsible for them? Regarding the history part, Moses recalls in his final speech before he dies the words that Megan will first chant tomorrow that were incorporated into the most widely observed Jewish holiday of all. What do you think is the most widely observed Jewish holiday? It's not Hanukkah. It's Passover. In the Passover Haggadah, shortly after Annie and Megan's Torah verses we will hear tomorrow morning, Moses is going to ascend Mount Nebo, overlook the land of Israel and Jericho and the water that flows from the Sea of Galilee in the north, all the way down into the Dead Sea, which Moses overlooks. Keep in mind, as you know, Moses never makes it into the land of Israel. And for 1,900 years, our people were never in the land of Israel. So how did we survive? Because of Torah, teaching, and the guideposts of our faith. Moses, in his speech, focuses on the future when the people have already conquered the land. It's like fast forward. What's it going to be like for these children years from now? Moses is thinking that way when they're enjoying its harvest. And at that time, he tells them, as we heard, to take every first fruit of the soil, put it in a basket, go to a sanctuary, and say this: I acknowledge this day before God that I have entered the land God gave to our ancestors, Abraham and Sarah. Then, as the priest takes the basket, the Israelite is supposed to continue saying, quote, Arami Oved Avi, my father was a fugitive Aramean. Or in some of your Haggadahs, it may say, my father was a wandering Aramean. And then you tell the story before dinner. That's why it takes 45 minutes to get to the meal. Then he went down to Egypt. And then you're supposed to proceed recalling the history of the Jewish people. And you're supposed to say, it's because of what God did for me in 2015, not in 1800 BCE. I am part of this history. Moses is speaking of Judaism as our collective inheritance. To this day, when that Torah or the ones in the sanctuary are taken from the ark, the traditional prayer in Hebrew uses a word slightly different than inheritance. It says, Morasha Kihilat Yaakov. The Torah is not an inheritance, but a legacy for every one of you who's a part of this people. The usual word for inheritance is Yerusha. That's inheritance, which comes from the same root as Morasha, but the difference between a legacy and an inheritance is more than semantics. It's significant. It's been suggested by the rabbis that when we inherit something, it retains some value even if we do nothing with it. If, for instance, someone leaves you something, like 40,000 points, it will continue to exist until you spend it or pass it on to the next generation. That's the meaning of the Torah's word for an inheritance, or Yerusha. But the Torah is not called an inheritance. It's called a morasha, a legacy. What is that? A legacy must be cultivated to be kept alive. How do you keep a legacy alive? By loving it and living it and reliving it, not by thinking of Judaism as the religion that my parents practice or the religion that was left for me in a box, but rather a living and loving Judaism grounded in history that inspires and guides and brings joy and elevates our lives. You keep a legacy alive by making it live in the here and now, not simply by passing it along, but by seeing the heritage of the past as the seed that brings forth the harvest of the future. By seeing the heritage of the past as the seed that brings forth the harvest of the future. So as part of his farewell address this week, Moses also says, and this is the blessings and curses second part, that Annie will chant, Uvo alecha kol habrachot ha'ele v'hisigucha ki tishma b'kol Adonai Elohecha, which means, if you Jews, and all people, but in this case talking to the Israelites, if you will but listen, all these blessings will come upon you and overtake you. It's a peculiar kind of promise, isn't it? We hear of people running away from curses, but whoever runs away from blessings? Who runs away from blessings? It's the same difficulty I mentioned at Temple's last board meeting regarding the 23rd Psalm. You know it by heart, right? Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me. And the Hebrew is even stronger than follow. Yirdefuni means shall pursue me all the days of my life. Why in the world would we run away from goodness and mercy? The implication is that people resist blessings, that blessings should have to pursue you instead of you pursuing them. Actually, how true it is that blessings often do pursue us. Usually we expect to find blessings in our ordinary lives, but often we look not just for love in the wrong places, we look for blessings in the wrong places. Many of our blessings pursue us at every stage of our lives, even in our deepest distress, and we never see it happening at the moment. The bar or bat mitzvah student who continues on, as I know Megan and Annie will, they continue on through confirmation and graduation and realize the blessing of Jewish growth after bar or bat mitzvah, not just up to it. The young couple who struggle with their doubt and apprehension before marriage, they work through it. They end up in untold fulfillment, children, and joy, even 5 kids. The college student who struggles and finds his or her footing again, even changing majors, as I did 6 times, or changing schools. It can end up becoming the blessing that the student never saw. Another example of blessings we never saw coming until later, when they overtake us finally, is leadership. Except for people whose egos starve for recognition, few of us actively seek the serious responsibilities which leadership imposes. Leadership is difficult and demanding. It requires a boundless depth of commitment to the cause or purpose, and the reward is realizing the blessings which may be hard to see while we are leading, but which are so much clearer later. That's why there's a river of tears at every bar, bat mitzvah, or funeral, whether they're tears of joy or tears of sadness. It's the blessing of the person standing in front of us, if it's a child, or in our hearts, if we lose a loved one of any age that overtakes us. So Moses recalls the history of our people from Abraham to Moses. And in closing, we ought to do the same from Europe to America. The words Emma Lazarus wrote, inscribed on the Statue of Liberty, were impossible for my great-great-grandparents who immigrated to these shores to appreciate fully in the 1880s and 90s. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. My, how blessings have overtaken us, American Jews, since our humblest immigrant beginnings, no matter what the curses, challenges, or distress have been. So when you exit the Danziger Chapel tonight, look up. The tapestry on that wall as you leave this chapel says it all. Ashrenu, how blessed we are. Matov chelkenu, it says. How good is our portion. Uma na'im Yerushatenu. And how beautiful our inheritance and legacy. Amen.